Welcome to Intel Studios Veterans Matter broadcast, the first live stream broadcast strictly for veterans and active duty military in the tri-state New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania areas. Veterans Matter is produced by Al Zentmeyer and Jerry Fournier and is an Intel Studios production. And now, live from our studio in Northfield, New Jersey, your host, Veterans Advocate Mike Merlino. Good afternoon, and we welcome all of our audience, and it is our hope that today's broadcast will assist or enlighten you, and at the very least let you know that there is help for you if needed. If you want friends to participate in our broadcast, they need to go to our website, veteransmatternj.com. That's veteransmatternj altogether, .com. Click on the Our Show circle, then click on subscribe. You can also go directly to YouTube, hit the search button, type in Intel Studios live stream, and then scroll down the options until you see Veterans Matter. Our phone lines are available throughout the broadcast, and I'll let our audience know when we begin taking calls. The phone number is 609-798-4475. I ask you to please be patient as the calls are answered in the order they appear. Once again, that phone number is 609-798-4475. And I'll take a moment to introduce a United States Army veteran and a great friend of ours here at Veterans Matter live stream broadcast. Been on our show many times, and it's great to have him back today. Pat Carney, welcome to Veterans Matter.
Thanks, Mike. I am happy to be here, as always.
And we have another guest on his way. Get all held up because of the weather outside, so we'll wait to introduce him when he gets here. Pat, because of the work that you do with the VA as an outreach specialist, and a lot of the things that are seen in the news today, the thing that caught my eye that made me call you this week was when I read the news about the United States Navy and concerned the USS George Washington aircraft carrier. 200 plus sailors were called off of that aircraft carrier amid what turned out to be 4 sailors committing suicide within a week.
Were they called off, or did they actually move off on purpose, like make a statement? Do you know?
Now, you hear about 22 veterans a day. You don't hear much about active duty military. But when I read the story and got into it, I was just shocked at the situation that our sailors were put in on that ship. I'd never realized that even though a ship is in port, that it's still carrying that many men. I mean, they were actually in dry dock, weren't they?
Yeah, and I had looked up stuff because I didn't really know when you had first texted us about it. I wasn't 100% certain what was going on. I had heard about the sailors moving off the ship, but from what I know from Navy friends is when the ship is in port at overhaul or getting a bunch of work done on it, basically, there's and with aircraft carriers, there's like 5,000 troops on board. When it's fully operational, like I think on the water, and I could be completely wrong, so if anyone from the Navy's listening, square me away. This aircraft carrier in particular, though, at any given time had 2,700 people working on it. Not living on it, but working on it. Of that 2,700, like 400 or so were actually living on the ship, and now half of them have moved off after these suicides, and it's crazy. I'm not me not being there, I don't know exactly what caused it all, but yeah, suicide in the active duty military is just as I want to say harped on, but that would kind of put a bad connotation onto bringing it to the forefront, but is harped on just as much as it is as veterans. I mean, it's ever prevalent in active duty military lifestyle, just like it is in veterans lifestyle.
Now, I'm going to take a moment to introduce our second guest, who I never had the pleasure of meeting before, Matt Jacobs. He's a licensed clinical social worker, and he's worked in the area of mental health since 2005, so it's going to work right in with our show today. Matt was hired with the VA in 2016, and along with working with other local mental health agencies, he's now, he was a case manager and later a suicide prevention coordinator here in South Jersey. Matt, I want to welcome you to Veterans Matter live stream broadcast.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a real honor. Thank you for the work that you are doing in our community. And yeah, you're right. We haven't met before. So under these circumstances, it's wonderful to meet you, and just an honor to be here.
I've been doing this work for quite a few years. First with the radio show, now with the live stream broadcast. And I've got to say that it's my honor to always be sitting across from the heroes of the guys that I consider heroes. You know, every liberty and every freedom that I get to enjoy and my family enjoys because of their sacrifices. And I know you know that better than most because you work with them.
Could not agree more. Yeah.
Now, you know, what I touched on briefly with Pat was the news that came out probably late last week. It broke that 200 plus sailors were taken off of the USS George Washington aircraft carrier down in Newport News, Virginia. Now, the boat had been in dry dock with a complete overhaul for a couple years already. I didn't, you know, the average person, which I consider myself just lucky enough to talk to veterans every week, but we don't realize what it takes in the military to prepare our Navy vessels for active duty. Now, they were in dry dock for 2 years already, and I never knew that they carried a full complement of sailors during all this work. Some of the things I've read here are just atrocious. And as I said to Pat, we all hear 22 veterans a day die from suicide. But this 4 men committed suicide within a week off of this vessel. Yeah. You know, and you don't hear about any of this stuff in the active duty military.
Yeah, you know, when you speak of my experience working at the VA since early 2017, coming on board, and you know, what I found in just doing direct clinical care at the local outpatient clinics in Northfield and Vineland and Cape May, and working one-on-one in groups and various capacities in my role here at the VA, there's a rich diversity of experience that our men and women bring out of their service to the country. And I say that only to point out that, you know, there's human beings behind the sailors. There's human beings behind the soldiers. And when you talk about a group of individuals who are on a dry dock situation, you know, we've been in a pandemic, you know, and even though they're a soldier, you know, you still are living in the same world the rest of us are living in, and that's been a difficult season. You know, I think we talk a lot about stigma and you know, where are the open doors for folks to get help? Do they feel they can enter into those doors freely? Do they feel as though that those doors are going to be a welcoming sense of help, or is it going to be a sense of conviction, or is it going to be a sense of now I'm not going to be able to serve anymore? So these are all some of the confounding issues that I think we face for both active military and veterans alike. And you know, there is no simple solutions. You know, I just came out of Governor's Challenge meetings where multiple states get together and talk about the various ways and interventions that we want to initiate in different states. And you know, one of the things that you realize is that there simply is no one solution here, right? There's no one cause for suicide, which means there's no one solution for suicide. So I think at the VA, what we've realized, and what I think, sorry to stand on my soapbox here, but I think at the VA, what we've realized is that we have to, if we want to really meet the needs of the veteran, we need to extend beyond the walls of the hospitals and the clinics, and to truly engage in true partnerships with the community, because that's where our veterans live, that's where they work, that's where they're going to school, is in the community. And the veterans are touching, interacting with the community each and every day. So I'd love to talk to you about a lot of the work that we're doing, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But thanks again for your question. And coming back to your initial question, it's a hard one. Why suicides occur sometimes in clusters like that. It's very complex. There's a lot of data and information out there. One of the things that I try to keep in mind is the VA has more than 20 years, over 2 decades of very, very specific data and criteria of veteran suicide. So now we've compiled this information, and now we're trying to make sense of it and really kind of put some interventions in place that are going to actually meet the needs of veterans who need it.
Matt, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, please do.
But
enough of me.
The situation in Virginia, Pat, you could probably answer this better because you were in the military.
Sure.
It's very difficult. It's got to be for a subordinate to mouth off about the situation when it's not favorable for them. Like I've been reading, like the food was supposed to be horrible. The sleeping, because there was 24-hour construction going on, they men and women were sleeping in their own vehicles. They weren't even sleeping in their berths.
Right.
So, if you're suffering from some emotional issue and you're in the military, that's got to be even more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a lot like it was the, I don't want to say, no, not the perfect storm, but it was just a equation of awfulness, whatever you want to call it. You're not sleeping. You already maybe have your own stresses from deployments or, being on ship for months on end. Then you add on top of it terrible sleep conditions. You're not eating very well. You're forced to sleep in your car.
Yeah.
Like that's just piling things on top of one another. And you're in the state still. It's not even like you're, like, say they're parked in wherever they're parked, some other country. Like, you're in the United States and you're dealing with that.
Yeah.
I can imagine, or I can at least, I can imagine and I can empathize with how they feel, because I know how times got for me in the Army, even stateside, because things happen. But yeah, it's everything, again, things just keep piling up, and if you have somebody that's already maybe has a proclivity to depression or to suicidal ideations or any of those things, I think those things are going to be exacerbated, and then they're going to show themselves more than they would if things were going well. Maybe if this person was at least getting a good night's sleep every night, they could deal with the bad food and they could deal with the hammering all day long. But they're not.
Pat, you were in Iraq. You were in a position of leadership. You had men working under, in atrocious conditions in the heat. I mean, is it normal for a subordinate to come up to you complaining, or do they just eat
all the time?
They do.
There's some that do it incredibly intelligently. There are others who do it not so intelligently. But I mean, and it's also, being an NCO is you need to know how your guys are feeling without them knowing how they feel. So you're listening to when Joeys are talking to each other, the privates are talking to each other. You're listening to what the E4 Mafia, the specialists and stuff, are saying to each other. So you kind of know what's going on. So then you as a leader can say, all right, I need to work out some range time for these guys. Because in Iraq, you can go to the range, usually on the fob, and just go down there and blow off a bunch of ammo and just have some sort of stress relief. Or you can go and you can play some basketball wherever they have it, or you can try to get a football game together or something along those lines on the fobs. Or you just, like, I don't want to go. I don't want to drop F bombs, but you can play, FF games and just try to keep things light.
Well,
because you're on patrol 8 hours a day sometimes, right?
The layman's perception of the soldier being a what was this? I had it right there. I had the
disciplined,
thought.
hardened
Just
warrior.
just being a not. I mean, I know they're all human, but I mean, just being. Gosh, I can't-
Vulnerable?
What was that?
Vulnerable?
Nah,
Just complaining about things.
like just following orders no matter what.
Oh,
yeah.
Just being
And
a
that's
Being a robot.
robot. That's
that,
like
and it's
that's wrong.
That's exactly. Well, no, we do. I mean, essentially we do, but it doesn't mean we're not going to say something about it. Like one of the things in my personality that became part of my personality because of the military was being told to do something I don't like, and me talking crap about it up until the moment I'm doing what I was told to do anyway.
And complaints
Right.
complaints go up.
Yeah, complaints keep going up, but guess what? I'm still doing it. Like, so it's one of those things, and it's not all the time, but it happens, right? I mean, everybody in the world has to do something they don't want to do or they don't agree with. I think another thing for combat MOS is this is going to sound very dark and very kind of, to me, it sounds ridiculous, but again, you look at the combat MOSs, the guys like the infantrymen, all those stresses that you have maybe that are happening at the FOB, you go on patrol and you get blown up or you get into a firefight or you get whatever, you forget about all that other stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and you really,
In
your
the
mind is
moment.
continually brought back to, oh yeah, what I was complaining about on the FOB before this patrol really doesn't matter because, I got an RPK laying down, 500 rounds a second at me right now or 500 rounds a minute at me. Things are put into perspective very quickly in a deployment setting. Where back home is where actually I would see the most of the complaining that would happen.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what it must be like. I mean, I spent a year 100 miles out in the Baltimore Canyon on an oil rig. But the food was great. Sleeping conditions were pretty good. I was a safety officer, so when something happened, I had to be available. So I have a little bit of a, of what it's like. But and our cranes are moving 24 hours a day on the oil rig. We're always getting supplies and stuff. You're on 12-hour shifts, so all you can do is work. Mm-hmm. So I was working 16 hours, and sleeping 8. I just can't imagine on a ship 24/7 working at a construction site and having that jackhammers. And when I read about it, and I was reading what the parents of a sailor who died by suicide while on board the USS George Washington, what he knew, it's very sad that it came to this, that 7 people died within a year, 4 by suicide. I don't even know how the other 3 died. Maybe construction accidents. I don't know,
Right.
because the military isn't real forthcoming, and when they speak, the guys at the top are very good at not telling you everything. And
there's also, active duty suicides always, at least for me, always seem to hit a little harder. Because when you're out of the military, the big thing is what, Matt? It's connectedness, right? You're connected every single day at work in the military, like whether you want to or not. There are people around you all the time, especially in lower enlisted ranks. Like you're never really alone.
Right.
So you see that suicide happens, and you're always kind of shocked, like, oh, I never saw that. I spent 12 hours a day with that guy. I would have never known. You're kind of blown away by it. Whereas as a veteran, hearing about veterans, you don't really know about that. Like, who were they with? Who were they hanging out with? How much time were they spending with other people? So it's hard to. Active duty ones are always, again, they always hit me harder. I'm sure they hit other people harder, thinking along those lines. But then you have 4 in a row. It's like, so how atrocious were these living conditions to have 4 people that were obviously connected to other people? There was 420 people on the boat. Like, they're all probably living in the same areas. I mean, how bad was it that it caused these suicide? Maybe had caused these suicide. Right. I don't want to, put words in anyone's mouth, but to me, it's always more shocking when someone on active duty or even a guardsman. Well, guardsman's a little bit better because they're home too, but yeah.
When you think about your time in the military, Pat, and the people that were working under you, or yourself even, if one of these sailors had these emotional problems, whatever brought it on, if they had gone forward, would they had been automatically discharged?
Due to
Because a lot
suicidal
of times
ideation.
they're afraid to speak up because you're afraid of what the fallout's going to be.
But if somebody's imminently suicidal, I know you directed your question to Pat, but I see him contemplating. I think it's hard to answer that question. Maybe you can answer it better than me, but I think, the immediacy of safety need always takes priority in that moment, and the dust can settle later. But you can't serve any longer if you're no longer with us. You can't serve any longer if you're to the point of taking your own life. So therefore, what happens from there? I'll be honest. I've heard lots of different stories of what people have experienced. I know that there have been folks who felt as though identifying mental illness, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideations resulted in them being separated in some way, shape, or form, even if not physically separated, maybe sort of not put into the same position maybe they would have otherwise been put in. And, that's tragic and difficult. But I've also seen where guys have taken time to get help and been able to re-engage with their soldiers and move forward with plans and even sometimes to continue on for installations overseas and having the opportunity to continue to serve in that way. But I don't know how you feel about that, Pat. I mean, I know in the Guard and different capacities in New Jersey, we've had these conversations.
We have.
Yeah.
And things from, because I got out in 2013. I served from 05 to 13. So I can only imagine how much things have changed in the almost 9 years that I've been out. Where I've heard they're different. I've heard things are better on the soldiers' end. Because I honestly, when you hear it from leadership or generals or on the TV about it, I tend to never believe it because everything rolls downhill, just like with any other hierarchy, especially in the military. How is it on the Joe? How is it on the private, from the E1 to the E6? Like, how is it on them?
Right.
Because when I was whether I was stationed in Alaska or stationed in Texas, if you had a soldier that said they were thinking about hurting themselves or hurting others or committing suicide, that person would be taken out of the barracks or taken out of the home they're in with their wife and their children, and they would be put at staff duty or at the staff duty desk or the CQ desk, which is charge of quarters, and staff duty is the 24-hour shift you do at the battalion level in case there's any emergencies that come in case there's anything that happens. There's someone awake 24 hours every day for 24 hours to call the commanders or call whoever needs to get called because some emergency happened or whatever. Well, that suicidal soldier is brought to live basically right next to the staff duty or the CQ desk on a green army cot with everything they could possibly need for X amount of time. They're just sitting there. They can go get food, but if they go anywhere, if they need to do anything, they always have to have somebody with them. So that means whoever's on staff duty that day. It's usually an E6 and two Joes. One of those Joes or the E6 has to go with that person, take that person to lunch to bring them back, whatever it is. Take them to a counseling thing, bring them back. I always saw it as a punishment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, if I say something,
Yeah.
I got to go sit next to CQ. Like, I'm a damn NCO. Like, yeah, if I'm feeling that way, I'm feeling that way. But I have a wife who's going to take care of me. I got, I have a support system. Like, tell me how to get into counseling easier. Don't just make me sit next to this freaking CQ desk. And literally, I mean, it's where the CQ desk was in Texas. It was right at the front door of the battalion building. So anyone walking into battalion and walking out of battalion saw staff duty, and then saw you on your damn cot, and they knew for a fact that you were living on that cot because you wanted to kill yourself.
Mm. Wow.
Which, of course, sitting on that, I can only imagine sitting on that cot, just makes you want to kill yourself.
Feels like the cot of shame.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's and again, I don't know if that's still the same practice now, but that's how it was when I was in.
Yeah.
And that, again, it's battalion specific. It's not every battalion did. I don't want to talk for everyone in the Army, but that's how it was in the units I was in.
Yeah, when I had the opportunity, I guess this is going back around 2014 or 15. I happened to go down to Camp Lejeune and then Paris Island for the graduation of Dawn's son was graduating. And I was with Eddie Afanador down there. And they were training guys in the use of these, they weren't really wheelchairs. They were more like tractors that were for just one guy was
those
a
track,
paraplegic.
the track wheelchairs
Right.
that Eddie was riding? Yeah, okay.
Right. Well,
Nice.
this one guy was a paraplegic, and he was a Marine. And he told this story. He was in Iraq, and one of the guys wanted out. He shot up the barracks, and he got hit in the spinal column, and
Wow.
he ended up paralyzed from it. And I can't think of the guy's name. The story was unbelievable, the way he told it. So I guess there could be worse circumstances that could come out of these things. But it was a shock to me to see this story,
Yeah.
something that you guys deal with all the time here at home. And when you hear 22 veterans a day, and I think it's more than that, I really do, because they don't have the figures on single car accidents and things like that. But you guys deal with this, sure, and you, Matt, I mean, that's your area of expertise.
Yeah, I think, when you talk about a number of suicides happening within a same area like that in a short period of time, it's extremely traumatic to experience the death of suicide from somebody that you know or someone you work near. So, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions asked. Was there any opportunity for debriefing? Did the sailors have an opportunity to talk about how they were impacted, because we know that when someone experiences a trauma, the sooner the better, to be able to get in there and talk to them about what they've experienced. And, I'd like to think that those doorways and those pathways are open. I simply don't know enough about it, but it sounds to me like, these things happen in short order, and there's going to need to be some questions answered. The sad thing is, sometimes there's, whenever there's a suicide, there's always more questions than answers. Especially for those who are left in the wake and those who are impacted, directly. Having, experienced, death by suicide within close circle of family in my own life, I know, there's never a clear pathway or understanding as to why somebody gets to that point of taking their life. But the sad reality is, and earlier, Pat, when you were talking about, being in difficult circumstances and conditions, clinically, we look at things from a perspective of protective factors and risk factors, and making sure that if there are some risk factors, such as depression, such as anxiety, such as being in difficult circumstances, your life is under threat, those kinds of situations, making sure that there's some protective factors. You think about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs to kind of break it down to a basic standpoint in my social work training. We have our basic safety needs met, and then from there, am I loved and do I belong? And I know, to quote Brene Brown, the famous author, she says, "In the absence of love and belonging, there's always suffering." So when someone doesn't feel loved or belonging, you'd like to think that that wouldn't ever be the case in the military, but certainly when guys and soldiers, retire or separate from the military service, sometimes they do feel that disconnect and that lack of love and belonging in their own community. And Pat, we talk about this all the time, like you said earlier about connectedness. It's really hard. It's really hard for guys to find connection again. And I think as they enter back into the community, that's a big part of what we're about. And Pat and I spent a great deal of thought, energy, time, effort spent around how do we help our vets in the community connect? Where can they find that meaningful connection? Because, there's a lot of guys out there who are suffering in silence. And we want to make sure that we have opportunities and touch points to be able to reach folks who are suffering in silence and help them to find connection. Whether it be, meeting up monthly, weekly, clinical, VA, whatever that may be for that individual, what they need, we want to put them in touch with folks and help them process and figure out what it is that we can, how we can best be of service to them. And that's easier said than done, but that's the work. That's what we're doing, and that's what we're trying to equip the community to do. And there's been so many efforts that we've been a part of. It's been an exciting couple years. Pat and I have had an opportunity to work pretty closely together, and I think all of us who know veterans, we want to make sure that we do recognize that they served, and we want to make sure that we recognize that there could be something underneath the surface, and maybe have opportunities to talk to a vet and help promote some of the connection points for them.
Now, Matt, how important is it to get the family involved also in this?
It's the most important part.
It's so important. Yeah.
It's the most important part. I mean, it's well, I guess it would be considered the right family involved, maybe.
Yeah. Well,
I know we've had instances where maybe not getting the family involved was a good idea, but it's a good idea. 9.9 out of 10, I guess.
I've seen, all the language around VA. You see a lot of the use of the term SMVF, service members, veterans, and their families. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of woven in, it's baked into the bread of the services that we want to provide for our veterans, and we recognize that yes, it's service members, it's veterans, and it's their families. So yeah, I mean, if you're not helping to equip the family as a whole, any one individual in that family can be very vulnerable. And I think as Pat has experience, I mean, you have an older, I won't speak about your family, but you have different ways people in your family have been affected at different times and different ages, and it affects a younger child differently than an older child. Mm-hmm. And then also recognizing, hey, if mom or dad is a veteran who's struggling and it's impacting the child in a negative way, do we give that child the opportunity to be able to maybe help understand and also help get their family member some help, in that case their father or their mother or their uncle or whoever the case may be. I know, in my own experience, sometimes you feel like you can't intervene or you can't ask questions or you can't get involved. And one of the things I would just, if anybody takes anything away from this, I hope they'll know that you want to ask the questions. You want to ask them if they feel like they're having thoughts of hurting themselves. If you get that sense when talking to somebody, ask that question. Hey, are you, it sounds like things have been tough. Are you having thoughts of hurting yourself? That can be a very difficult question to ask, I understand, but I think the ramifications of not asking are much more difficult. So hopefully that's something that we're getting the message out there to the community. Again, suicide's complex. It's challenging. It can be devastating to even have these conversations. But I think at the end of the day, promoting connection, you talk about 22 a day, and there's different data that indicates it's fluctuated down to 17.8 or 9 per day. There has been some data that would suggest that some headway's being made, but it's difficult to say. Like you said, suicide's complex. the data takes years to disseminate and to. I think the most recent data we even have right now is 2019. So we're always a couple years behind as it relates to that suicide data, because things like you said, single car accidents and just difficult ways to determine suicidality sometimes.
Now, if we had a listener out there who knows someone in their family who's suffering, what the first thing you would advise them to do?
Just just listen. Yeah, just listen to them. Try to give them an opportunity to talk to you about what it is that they're going through. I think we can be quick to throw a quick fix for somebody, or if we're a spiritual person, and maybe share a scripture with them, or if we're if we're somebody who's real high energy, positive, high achieving person, say, hey, just go get this done or get in shape, or have a one size fits all quick fix answer isn't the way. We want to make sure we listen, and that we give them an opportunity to share what it is that's going on. Because we can see somebody struggling, but until we listen to what their story is, or what they're going through, or what they need, if you're not the one to listen to them, then help them find a path. But yeah, I think that's a great place to start, is to listen. The Veterans Crisis Line is available to anybody 24/7. You don't have to be a veteran to call. If you're concerned about a vet, you can call on a veteran's behalf and talk to a crisis counselor about what's going on. What you may not deem as being a problem maybe is a bigger problem than you think. So it may be good to get some counsel on that. There's various different levels of concern. Is there an immediate concern? Is there a safety concern? Is somebody talking about suicide? Does somebody have a plan in place? Is somebody talking about giving important items away, or sort of losing hope for the future? If these are all things that you see happening, then it's really your obligation, and it's the most loving thing you can do, is to listen to them and give them an opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, when in doubt, you call that crisis line.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Always a better safe than sorry move. Call the crisis line. If you don't, even if the person, if it's a spouse trying to help their husband or their wife that are dealing with those kind of emotions, and they don't know what to say, they don't know what to do, because the person maybe is the type of person that doesn't really open up much, and then all of a sudden the floodgates are open and you don't know how to deal with it. Call the crisis line. Right?
And to secondary to that, Pat, and Mike, there's a program in the VA called Coaching into Care. So if you have somebody who is, the family recognizes is struggling and is really concerned, we're talking about the family here. The Coaching into Care is an opportunity for them to engage the family members, to talk to them about how do you help coach this person into care. How do you help coach the veteran who hasn't seen primary care in a few years, or is neglecting themselves? And we say, man, they used to be more active. They used to get out of bed. They're not showering. They're not taking care of themselves. They seem like they're depressed. How do we help coach that person into some care that's going to be meaningful and helpful, and give them a glimmer of hope for the future?
You mentioned something, Matt, and every week before I do the show, my prayer is not just that this show could help someone, is that somehow we can come to some understanding that there may be a spiritual healing that we don't utilize.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you said, sharing a scripture with somebody.
Yeah.
And I think that could be so important, and it's an area that we totally miss a lot of times.
Well, we talk a lot about engaging the faith communities too. I know at a local church, Mission Point Church in Summers Point, I had the opportunity to partner with some folks and provide some education around
What
suicide.
church is that?
This was Mission Point Church in Summers Point.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I thought that hosting something, I think we did it on a Sunday evening. I thought maybe we might have a dozen people show up, those faithful 4 in the front row, and a couple others. But To my surprise, there was over 100 people who came out, and the interaction and the interest was, very high. And what it reminded me is that, just like our vets are working in in our community, they're also attending faith community churches. And if they're not, maybe their spouses or their family members are. So there's some leadership in our communities, in the faith communities, where they can be a real opportunity, a real person who's maybe trusted, if not maybe sought out, somebody who could be trusted to at least have an open conversation, and frankly, some training to address some of those areas. We talk about, when we talk about trauma, we talk about moral injury. And sometimes those moral injuries that people have where they expected something to go a certain way and it wasn't what they expected. And maybe there's some disappointment in their leadership, or there's some disappointment even in themselves by what they did or didn't do. And
it's like you can read my mind. Exactly what I was going to bring up next was faith-based and moral injury issues.
Yeah.
I mean, moral injury being, like you're saying, you expect one thing, but you get another, or you're taught your whole life the Ten Commandments, right? In Christian faith, well, you're forced to technically break those commandments when you're overseas. How do you fight that? How do you deal with that kind of thing? And it's really, now I'm trying to turn it into a question, but is bringing faith better in those kind of situations, do you think? Or do you think if someone is dealing with that moral injury, a very religious person has that moral injury, do you steer away from the faith?
Well, let me share a story, and I would never disclose any information about a veteran from clinical interactions that would disclose their identity in any way. But I'll share a story about this moral injury piece because I think this one always kind of hit home for me. When we talk about moral injury and we say, well, what do we mean? We're talking about someone being asked to do something that extends them beyond what they would believe to be morally acceptable. So there's a moral injury that occurs. For example, I know my superior always has my back, but then you find yourself in a situation where it's like, oh, wow, maybe they didn't have my back, and that could be a moral injury. For someone I spoke to one time, he said, Matt, when I served in the war as a sniper, he said I was told to shoot at anything on the other side of the river, and the first thing that was on the other side of the river was a father and a child holding hands walking. And I won't share anything else about that story, but those are some of the moral difficulties that a soldier carries with them, and those moral injuries cut very deep, and they do touch in areas of spiritual beliefs. So to answer Pat's question, I think that spirituality piece may not be tied into a formal religion for somebody, but it may be areas of their physical development, their intellectual development, their emotional development, but then there's a spiritual component that says, this doesn't align for me. This doesn't fit into my world view or understanding. Or if there is a God, to answer those kinds of questions, there's moral dilemmas of, how could a good God allow something terrible like this to happen to someone I care about? Or to me.
My son Tim is pastor of the Gathering Church down in Cape May County. And
what's that? One of your 14 or 15 kids, right? That's one of your 15 kids there, Mike?
He's got 5. Yeah, he's got 5 children. So, 5 grandchildren I got. Tim.
Wow.
But Tim sent me this thing a little while ago. It's called Out of the Darkness.
Yeah.
About a special operations Marine and how difficult it was for him that coming to know Christ personally. I have wanted to get this out there so badly. It can be difficult in the best of times. I go to Fusion, and I've been trying to work some kind of a service. There was a guy Timmy had told me about. I think he was a Vietnam vet that was suffering horribly from PTSD. He became a minister, and then he started to minister to other Vietnam vets. and the healing that they got through spiritual healing
Yeah.
was so successful beyond anything that we've been able to do.
Well, I think if you look at the AA model, there's a spiritual component sort of at the center of the work that's done. And I've worked with veterans and community members alike who have benefited from the AA model and had success in sobriety, in large part because of that model. And part of that success is that individual interaction of having a sponsor, somebody who you can kind of connect with. So I think whether we're talking about any type of connectedness, I think as it relates to that spiritual connection, there is a spiritual connection of our meaningful interaction with our Creator, but also with other people who share a similar a viewpoint. And those faith communities can bring very strong fellowship and support. And again, we talked earlier about protective factors. Really strong protective factor to be involved in a faith community, involved in a community of any time, whether any kind, whether it be a Bible study or meet up at the gym days or church fellowship of some kind. Those connection points are hugely important, and I think we underestimate that spiritual piece as well, like you said, because there's nagging questions that we all struggle with, and sometimes there's itches that we just can't scratch. And giving ourselves an opportunity to at least explore these topics, and maybe not even realize how deep they do affect us. So those are areas of that deeper development, and that faith journey walk that everybody goes on, and we all put our faith in something, right? So I think that's a big part of the healing process for anybody who has had that moral injury piece. It may not be, again, tied into a religious sphere, in particular, but it may also encompass some of those spiritual questions where they would engage people in their own family or people in their own community on these questions of faith and how they've been, feeling that moral injury. So it's challenging stuff. It's not easy. It's not easy work to do. When we talk about people who are dealing with substance use issues, I work with a lot of vets who struggle with alcoholism, and for many of them, they maybe started their first experiences with drinking were in the military, and things that were commonplace and hold good memories for them also hold now in their later life maybe some not so good memories in some ways that it's negatively affected them. But I say that all to share is that just like somebody who struggled with alcoholism will always have that daily struggle to say, I would really like to have a drink. I really would actually like to go in and have a drink, but I also know that drinking is not healthy for me, and I've decided it's not going to be a part of my life. And in the same token, for somebody who's experienced that moral injury, it's sort of that daily experience of, okay, I have to grapple with this again and think this through and how I'm going to cope. Because I can't erase what I experienced. I can't erase the things that I think about and that my mind goes to, but I can build up ways and coping skills to address those thoughts as they come at me. But again, these are all things that I don't come from a place of higher authority on this kind of stuff, but I do think that you're well served if you're listening to this and you know someone who's struggling, or you yourself are struggling. Just take a first step of reaching out to somebody you trust and talking, and figure out what's going to work for you. What's the next step for you? Where's an open door for you to enter in? And for a lot of us, I think we just need to find community. We really need to find those touch points, and then we can start to address those deeper issues that we struggle with.
I got a text from a friend over in Ventnor that's his opinion is that we've gone backwards in our help for vets, but I gotta tell you, I don't believe that. I can remember, I guess Pat was either just coming home from the military. This was around 2012, and Noel Cook had just. He was the Undersecretary of Defense under President Obama, and his job was to go to Walt Reed and figure out what was going on with our warrior transition units. It seemed that our men and women coming home were having more problems. And
Right.
when Noel completed his investigation and brought it to the president, they fired him.
Wow.
Because what they found out was that all they were doing was medicine, and between the drugs and the alcohol, our men were and women were in much worse shape than
Yeah.
they had been.
Yeah.
So they ended up closing down Walter Reed, the transition units at the time.
Mm.
And I can remember, when we were friends with Noel, he came
Yeah.
home. He's a member of Post 352, and I can remember him talking about what our men and women went through in the beginning of that war coming home.
Yeah.
So I think you guys are on the forefront of this. I mean, it's difficult at best to
Yeah.
what you guys are dealing with every day, on top of the maybe the things that are just normal for
Right.
Yeah.
for an outreach specialist. Just getting a cemetery plot out at the Atlantic County Cemetery for a deceased veteran, or to deal with this problem. This has got to be so time consuming,
Yeah.
and there's just no quick fix for this.
Yeah.
Nope.
And a lot of self care. Got to take care of ourselves.
Ton of self care.
It's-
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot like snipe hunting. If anybody knows what snipe hunting is, but yeah, you're always trying to find the solution, and you think you're making a progress in one path, and then it's just like, oh crap, that didn't work. Then you try something else, and you try something else. Everything kind of comes back to connectedness, right? But it's not a job that if you want easy, quick victories, getting into veteran suicide prevention is not something we're going to get short, quick victories.
Right. Yeah. I was just going to say one quick comment for the Veterans Crisis Line. What I am not surprised to hear, but what's been communicated over and over recently is there's been a huge uptick in the amount of veterans who are utilizing the text messaging service for the crisis line. So for some of us, there's a new generation that doesn't like talking on the phone, in case we haven't all noticed, right?
Yep.
There's our thumbs do our talking, and we do a lot of communicating through text. And the Veterans Crisis Line, you can send a confidential text to 838255. That's the Veterans Crisis Line number for text, and you can get on there and chat with somebody online as well. And so there's a couple different ways to connect with the Veterans Crisis Line, and there's some new information that's going to be hitting the community in the upcoming months and years with 988. That's going to be the crisis line number in the near future for mental health crisis.
We're going to take
yeah.
a short break. We're
Sure.
going to play this song. Then we're going to get back into this and go into the problem-solving area.
Okay.
On November 8, 1965, the 173rd Airborne Brigade on Operation Hump, War Zone D in Vietnam, were ambushed by over 1,200 VC. 48 American soldiers lost their lives. Severely wounded and risking his own life, Lawrence Joel, a medic, was the first living black man since the Spanish-American War to receive the United States Medal of Honor for saving so many lives in the midst of battle that day. Our friend Niles Harris, retired 25 years United States Army, the guy who gave Big Kenny his top hat, was one of the wounded who lived. This song is his story. Caught in the action of kill or be killed, greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for his brother.
as he left South Dakota to fight for the red, white, and blue. He was 19 and green with a new M16, just doing what he had to do. He was dropped in the jungle where the choppers would rumble with the smell of napalm in the air. Then the sergeant said, look up ahead. Like a dark evil cloud, 1,200 came down on him and 29 more. They fought for their lives, but most of them died in the 173rd Airborne. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky, 1965, the 8th of November. Now he's 58 and his ponytail's gray, but the battle's still blazing in his head. He limps when he walks, but he's strong when he talks about the shrapnel that left in his leg. He puts on a gray suit over his airborne tattoo, and he ties it on one time a year, and remembers the fallen as he orders a tall one and swallows it down with his tears. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky, 1965, the 8th of November. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky, 1965. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky, 1965, the 8th of November. The 8th of November. 8th of November. Said goodbye to his mama as he left South Dakota to fight for the red, white, and blue. He was 19 and green with a new M16, just doing what he had to do.
And welcome back to Veterans Matter live stream broadcast. That was Big Enriched with the 8th of November. And before we get back to our regular show, we're going to make a couple announcements here. I wanted to let people know that on Wednesday, May 11th, South Jersey Quilts of Valor is having their spring fundraiser at Randazzo's Pizzeria and Family Restaurant in Ocean City, located at 34th and Asbury, 4 to 9 p.m. And it can eat in or take out or delivery. Randazzo will donate 15% of the proceeds to South Jersey Quilts of Valor. So that's this coming Wednesday, May 11th. A week from tomorrow's Mother's Day, so God bless all the moms out there. I wanted to tell you that a week from tomorrow at the Legion Post 352 in Summers Point, 1st and Pennsylvania Avenue, is the 12th annual Veterans Benefit Pig Roast and Chicken Barbecue. 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. It's $20 donation at the door. If you happen to know one of the Legion riders, you can pick up your tickets early for them. The $20 gets you a barbecue, which is a North Carolina pork and chicken platter with all the fixings. Includes free draft beer or soft drinks. If mixed drinks is your thing, you could go in and get them at the cash bar inside the post. There'll also be hot dogs and hamburgers for the kids. This event is hosted by Len Daggett, a United States Army veteran, owns Back Bay Barbecue. And for your entertainment, the live music by the Motts Creek Pickers. It always seems like every guest leaves with a door prize, 50-50, or a Chinese auction. So come on out and support those men and women who have sacrificed so much for each of us. And the Legion Riders, every single dollar they bring in goes to help local veterans. They also have a great scholarship program. This year, there will be 9 local students getting $1,000 scholarships. So come on out and support this effort. We do 2 fundraisers a year. We do our fall ride for the vet, which is a motorcycle ride that starts at Harley Davidson. But this one is right at the post. There is no ride in conjunction, so come out 1 to 5 p.m. American Legion, Post 352, Summers Point. And Pat, I'll let you.
What day is that, Mike? Again? What day is the pig roast again?
That's Sunday the 15th. It's a week from tomorrow, and 1 to 5 p.m. If you want to, Pat, go ahead and announce.
May 25th. We have the Atlantic City Regional Stand Down happening in Atlantic City. If you or you know a veteran family who are economically distressed, make sure they come out. It's at the All Wars Memorial Building on 1510 Adriatic Avenue in Atlantic City. Again, May 25th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. All Wars Memorial Building in Atlantic City on Adriatic Avenue. It's always an awesome event. I've
Really well attended.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of the past 2 years being part of the committee for the stand down and co-chairing the mobile stand downs and working with Pat Tatum and Bob Luby on these, and they're always fantastic events, and they help so many vets.
Each vet gets a one-on-one assistant for the day, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
To kind of walk them through.
Walk them through. We have a PX.
Great meal.
Military clothing. Yeah, they get a hot meal. Any kind of benefits and stuff that they're
Shoes,
in
clothing.
for, they need. Usually we do a whole health screening for them as well. If they want to see the doc, they can see the doc, or they can see a counselor. Kind of the whole 9 yards for them.
Yeah, and there's bunch of community partners out there, and it's a great community effort, and I love it when the weather is nice and warm, and really it's a fun day. It's a great opportunity to serve our vets. Just so many great organizations come out that day to just all jump in. So it's a great thing to see happen in our community, and I wanted to tip my cap to Pat and just our outreach team in general, because I think sometimes we're so busy moving forward in life and moving forward and pressing on, we forget some of the accomplishments that have happened, and what Pat was able to accomplish with some of the mobile stand downs and opening up opportunities to continue this program in light of some very heavy restrictions, and to do things out in the open air and to provide opportunities in different communities in Pleasantville and Cape May County and really all over the region. How many different mobile stand downs did you?
We've had 8.
Yeah.
7 or 8 now. We've had,
and that was
2 in Atlantic County, Cape May County, then Gloucester, had a couple up north, and we just had another one in Vineland as well.
Pat has an ability to. I'm sure you probably get this from your parents or just the way you're wired, but you also your own self-determination. If there's barriers in the way, Pat will go around, over, through. It does not matter. There will be no. If there is a goal on the other side of that barrier, it will not stop him. So I just wanted to say that. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Matt. I don't like barriers.
Barriers don't like
They're
you.
silly. They're silly, especially when they're silly ones.
You know, Pat, I guess it's been maybe 6 weeks ago, I had the honor of having Project Refit here.
Yeah.
And
James.
I saw that you posted
Yeah,
something.
May 26th, day after Stand Down.
Yeah.
They're having their big golf outing up at Ramblewood Country Club. Registration starts at 11. Tee off at 12:30ish, 12:30. If you check me out on Facebook, just Patrick Carney, if you search it, it's myself and Alpha Dog there as a profile picture. I don't have an @ for anybody. Or you can look up Project Refit on Facebook or any of the popular social media posts. It's all over there, and you can register for the golf outing there as well.
When I met James from Project Refit last summer, or somewhere around that time period, but prior to that, I was really in awe of the mobilization and the ability to help. We talked about promoting connectedness. As we all know, last summer, for a lot of our veterans was difficult, particularly August when there was the pullout in Afghanistan and some of the just the feelings surrounding and that was very triggering for a lot of our vets. What I saw firsthand as James invited me in to be a part of one of their connection points throughout the week, and I had an opportunity to sit in. There was a handful of veterans processing what they were seeing, what they were feeling, what they were thinking, and it was some hard stuff. It was some difficult conversations. There were some difficult words spoken, but it gave them an opportunity to do that. And those thoughts were going to get bounced off somewhere. So I think they were well served to be able to do it in a healthy way, in a way that was accepting, in a way that was also able to provide feedback immediately and non-judgmental, no stigma, and people were able to kind of bear, really confess some of the difficulties that they were struggling with, some of the really hard things they were walking through, and they found support. And I saw that firsthand, so I appreciate you just bringing him up.
Yeah, I mean,
he's a good partner of ours.
3 nights a week for at least the past 3 years. They do buddy check-ins 3 nights.
Virtually.
3 nights a week, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, for at least the past 3 years. They've been doing these check-ins, and it's a peer-to-peer support group basically.
Yeah. The
they're
peer model works.
Yeah, that absolutely works, and they've been doing a fantastic job of it.
Yep.
It was an unbelievable experience, Pat, having Dan Lombard in here and talk about his experience in Iraq.
Afghanistan.
And I'll tell you, it was just riveting what he'd been through.
Oh, yeah.
And can you give our listeners, because what is Project Refit all about?
Connectedness. I mean, again, I can't say it enough. It's getting people connected and keeping them connected, keeping them healthy, keeping them open. It's flipping the script from what many service members were brainwashed into doing. Like, I got to take everything on myself. I have to take on my emotional problems. I have to take on my mental health all on myself. It's dividing the weight of the mental anguish, dividing that weight amongst a group of friends, a group of people, and it's connecting people, and it's connecting service members, it's connecting first responders. They don't work just with veterans, and doing it in a way that's easy, and they're coming to you with these mobile bases that they have. Even with the golf outing, it's an atypical golf outing, but then it has that Project Refit flair where it's like, we're going to register us at 11 and we tee off at 12, and foursomes are going to go out and we'll come back. There's a buffet. We're going to have a good time. Like nothing, set in stone. Nothing over. We got this time and this time and this time. Nothing structured. Just having at it and having a good time, and making sure everyone has a good time, and making sure everyone's again connected with one another.
Right. I really missed that what you did for the few years when we would bring in about 20 wounded warriors, and one of our committee was Steve Callender, who was the president of Tropicana at the time, and he would put all 20 veterans up on the hotel. It would never cost. And then come in on a Wednesday, Thursday night, we would have an outing at Boogie Nights at Tropicana, and it would be open to the public, and get to see these wounded warriors, these men and women, some without limbs, just to have that opportunity to see these, the sacrifices that they made. And then we would have a golf outing on Friday and a Saturday banquet. And on a couple of occasions, we actually had Clinton Romisha, a Medal of Honor recipient from Afghanistan. Doc Ballard, who was a Medal of Honor recipient from Vietnam. It was just a great, something that we should try to get back to, because we had a lot of good things going back in them days, and let a few people just put a
ruin it
damper
for
on.
us.
Yeah. I think those people are gone now. I think maybe
Those people. That's good.
There's always a couple that just for whatever reason,
Yeah, they want to.
But Pat, I want to ask you a question. We're talking today mostly about veteran suicide, and I know you have a service dog, Alpha. I get to look at him weekly here. But where do they fit in? Where does the service dog fit in all this?
Boy, oh boy. So I've recently had to retire Alpha, actually. After, as you know, after Mom and Dad passed. Alpha was really close with my dad, for whatever reason. I don't even really know exactly why, but my dad just had that way about him, and that way he was always like that with dogs. So whenever Alpha saw him, it was just over the moon to see my dad. No one else. Like, he's excited to see me, and he's excited to see my dad. And they were really the only two people he got really, really excited for to see. When Dad was home in hospice care, Alpha didn't leave the dining room, didn't leave his side. Like, he was there, and he did what I needed him to do, right? Like, just help me take care and deal with what was going on with my dad. And I think something with him just got him more protective, got him a little more aggressive, and try as I might and trying to get it out of him, I've just had to kind of reevaluate it and unfortunately retire him. He's still my dog. He's still at the house. He's still with the kids and everything like that. He's still an amazing animal. Just taking him out with me all the time in random situations, I had to kind of make that executive decision. So, but that being said, where service dogs fit in with service members, with military personnel or veterans, a veteran, and it's I guess it's with any veteran, but specifically those who have seen combat, whether that's combat action or combat infantry or combat medics or whatever you want to call it. Those people for the rest of their lives are going to be on a yellow status. So what I mean is, Mike, right now you're sitting here, Matt, you're sitting here right now in a green status. You're not thinking that at any point someone could come through that front door and really do a lot of damage in this room. And I know that because Matt has his back to the door, and I haven't faced anywhere but this direction my entire time. So after, you're always yellow, right? Or service members are always in a yellow status, and at a red status, obviously you'd be using your mind or engaging something or someone or whatever. But you're always at yellow. Well, so are dogs. I mean, dogs always bark at the doorbell. They always, if you say their name, if they're out cold sleeping, as soon as you say their name, what are they? Up on their feet and ready to go, right? That's that yellow status. So I think service members and canines have that in common, and they see that in one another. They can smell it in one another, or the dogs can smell it in the veteran, and I think the veteran can see it in the dog. And I think mixing those things together and taking that veteran's focus off of all the things that's around him and putting it on the dog, making sure the dog's good, because the dog's in yellow all the time as well, I think really just helps. It it shifts the focus of what the veteran's focusing on. At least that's how it is with me with Alpha. It shifts my focus from everything else to me and Alpha. Is Alpha good? Am I good? Am I all right? Is he walking? Is he this and that? And it might sound like a lot to think about, but it just becomes natural. And then if the service member is involved with the training of the animal, I think it's even better, because then that veteran is learning not only technically, I guess, kind of like a trade, training animals and how to get dogs to do certain things in whatever way to make that happen. Was very introspective for me, showing me triggers I didn't even know I had, like sitting in the checkout line at a grocery store was a trigger for me, and I never realized it until I had Alpha. Until I was in a grocery store line, and Alpha kept trying to go in front of me and behind me and in front of me and behind me, trying to check things because I was anxious, and I didn't realize it. I'm like, Alpha, what are you doing, man? So that's finally was like, oh, I got to teach you to do something here. So, which I love. A lot of people don't love it. I'd go into a checkout line, the aisles, whether they're at Walmart or wherever. I'd put Alpha in a downstay at the very end, so no one could come into the line that I'm in. Put him in a downstay, and I'd do my checkout, and it was amazing the difference in me. The difference I felt. Like I would get sweats. I would get cold sweats or whatever you want to call it, like sitting in those lines without Alpha, but then having to block that line and knowing I'm the only person that's coming in that line, and knowing Alpha's not moving an inch for anybody with their damn cart that's coming toward him was incredibly common for me, where I'm able now to talk to the cashier, I'm able to just check out and use my debit card and, grab my stuff and load it in the cart, and then I start walking away, and I call Alpha, and he's right at my heel, right at my side. Was such a difference. Those kind of things, and that's the only thing. If a person was standing there instead of Alpha, there would have been an argument, right? If my son was standing there blocking somebody from coming in, there would have been an argument. There would have been, oh, I'm going to call the manager, and I'm going to this, and I'm going to that. Whoever's waiting behind us. But the fact that Alpha's there as my service dog made all the difference in the world. No one ever had the guts to say anything. They'd look all upset, but they never said a word, and I didn't care about that. Made all the difference in the world. So being able to share, have that extra set of eyes, or being able to share that yellow status together, I think, at least for me, is what worked the best. Alpha's also a very energetic dog. So for me, when I'm feeling my worst, I never want to do anything. I just want to sit on my ass and do nothing. Alpha made sure that never happened. Always up, always moving, always doing something. Even if it's going out and playing with him and watching him be a goofball for a while, just be a dog, would pull me out of that stupor I was in and keep me moving forward. At night, he still at home, he still does kind of all the service things he did. It's just really out in public that I was having issues. At night, I start sleeping bad, start having a nightmare or whatever. Alpha's up, and he's right in my face. For whatever reason, he just takes his nose and jams it as hard as he can in my face, but that's how he does it. And he wakes me up, and I get up, or I'll take him out, or I'll walk around the house or whatever with him, and then I'll get back to sleep, Wow. That's a huge help, because it lets me just kind of shut off whatever the heck I was dreaming about, kind of reset and go to sleep and get a good night's sleep, hopefully. So those are all things that, he would do for me, and some of them he still can. But I think that's the difference it makes, it's that, it's adding another, I always say find your fire team, right? A fire team being, an NCO and 3 guys, or just 4 guys that you deploy together that you're thick as thieves. To this day, I still talk to all the members of my fire teams that I had. We're to this day, we're still best of friends. When you're home and you have, for Alpha, for me, he was the first member of my new fire team. And then became Matt, and then it was Chris, and then whoever else, right? And you maybe have a number of different fire teams in your life, right? You have your professional fire team, maybe you have your personal fire team, you have, an animal fire team. Alpha was that first member of my fire team, though. I guess Melissa technically was the first member of my fire team, but for
Right.
Alpha and myself, it was, he was that first member and the
Yeah.
first person who I knew would always have my back no matter what.
Let me ask you a question, guys. In your work with the VA, do you ever recommend a veteran get a service dog? Does the VA quantify that?
I got it. So
Go ahead. Yeah.
VA, they will quantify it. If you ask for instance, and I miss him
Therapist.
terribly because he retired, Dr. Ortega. When I was first kind of deciding, and well, I guess my mom had brought up why that, you know how mom was. You need a service dog. That's the end of the story. Get a service dog. But all right, I digress. I went to Dr. Ortega. I said, "Look, I'm thinking about getting a service dog." He was like, "You absolutely should. Absolutely should." I was like, "Well, do you mind writing a letter for me? Not so much for the organization, but the letter just kind of confirms for me. It was a confirmation for myself. And like, okay, wow, I really do need one. A doctor thinks I need one. It's like, quote unquote, a script. But you can use those letters then for tax returns. I'm getting off base here, but you kind of get that letter, and then 10 out of 10 times before this past August. So before August 2021, before August 2021, the veteran had to go to a outside nonprofit to get the service dog. Now, if the VA would help pay for those vet bills for your service dog through the prosthetics department, if the dog was obtained through a Assistant Dogs International approved organization, so whether it's I'm trying to think of Semper Fido, the one in New York that Luis Montalvan used for Tuesday. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. They were all ADI certified organizations. So the VA would help pay for dogs who came from ADI organizations, help pay their vet bills. If you didn't get your dog from a different nonprofit that wasn't ADI, you were kind of on your own to pay for those vet bills. Well, you were on your own, unless that organization helped cover them or whatnot. Fast forward to this past August, the PAWS Act was signed in August, and that gave the Department of Veteran Affairs 180 days to pick 5 pilot sites, and this is currently going on now, 5 pilot sites to create service dog programs in the VA that the VA would then contract out with a nonprofit. So say for us here in South Jersey, we would, if Wilmington had the service dog program, which they don't, but if Wilmington had it, Wilmington would say, okay, we have a nonprofit that does service dogs in Delaware, we have a nonprofit that does service dogs in New Jersey. They received the grant that revolves around the PAWS Act, so they're basically receiving a grant from the VA that pays them to provide service dogs to the Department of Veteran Affairs or Veterans Health Administration, and then the dogs and the veterans are connected with those organizations, and the dogs are connected together with the veterans that way. So it's coming. I mean, it's very slow, it's sure, like everything in the government, but the PAWS Act this past August, so pretty soon we'll start seeing VA provided service dogs for vets.
Yeah, I was just going to mention too. You asked Pat about service dogs in general, and I think for anybody who's experienced trauma, and we'd be remiss to not mention there are a lot of survivors of military sexual trauma who also can benefit from the service dog as well, or we should even limit to a dog, service animal.
Well, actually, technically, according to the ADA here,
that's
I'll hit you
true.
with some
That's
knowledge.
true.
Only 2 animals that can be service animals are dogs and mini horses.
Wow. There you go.
There you go. Fun fact for the day, everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I've learned in the last few months, I had vet to vet here a couple weeks ago, Sam Console, and then about 2 months ago, I had Operation Canine Beethoven in here, who aren't service dogs; they're emotional support dogs.
Right.
But there's certainly a place also for them.
Well, yeah, I mean, the big difference between emotional support and service dogs is really it all comes down to access, access to public areas, right? So where service dogs are assisting someone with a medical need, emotional support animals, you have to get permission to bring the animal into wherever you're going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I know my dog is not an emotional support dog animal, but he certainly provides me with plenty of emotional support. So.
Yeah, but it's man. You're talking about MST survivors, or victims. I mean, the fact that dog is on yellow all the time, I would imagine would help that person, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of going back to that fact, and I could talk for hours about dogs and service dogs, but I lost my train of thought though. So go ahead, Mike.
Them being on yellow, yeah.
We've been talking about veteran suicide, and Pat, you sent this poster out a few months ago, and there's some things on here that I've talked about, but I don't really understand what it means. And how to support someone with PTSD, and there's 5 factors here, and I'm going to let you guys maybe talk about each one of these things and let us know where they falls into.
Okay. Well, earlier we talked about listening and being empathetic, and the first one on there is to validate. I think sometimes we're quick to say, well, for example, if a veteran is sharing about their experience, well, that was then and this is now, or that you knew what you were signing up for, or some sort of a quick response that does not in any way indicate that you're listening to what the person's saying is simply not helpful. So we want to validate folks, even if we don't agree with them, even if we feel differently, or even if we are feeling worn down. It's difficult sometimes to be around people who are in pain. There's the old adage that hurt people, right? When I'm hurting, when I'm not at my best, I tend to lash out a little bit more, and I'm a little bit shorter temper, or a little bit shorter fuse with the people around me, and a little more prickly in the way I interact with my environment. But we want to make sure that as it relates to working with somebody who has PTSD, or trying to be supported of them, we want to validate those feelings. I think for folks who struggle with, things, common things we see with folks who struggle with PTSD, being in public, sitting in a restaurant where your back, like Pat mentioned about where we're positioned in this room right now, wouldn't feel comfortable. And being sensitive to those things to validate that, to say, yes, I get it. That doesn't feel comfortable for you. And when we talk about regrounding and sort of maintaining connection to where we are in our environment, and it's amazing. Earlier this week I was in a conference where we were sitting in a room all day, and they took a break, and somebody who was a yoga instructor had us all take a couple deep breaths. It was awkward. It didn't feel normal, but if you participated in it, what you found is, a couple good breaths can really help ground you. So practicing those things are important. So validating and helping folks to reground and regroup is helpful. So I tackled number 1. Pat, you want to tackle number 2?
Yeah, absolutely. So remind them that you are there for them, no matter what, and that everything's going to be okay. This kind of speaks for itself at the same time as reading it. But making sure that person knows that they're not going to be alone in this situation at all. Come hell or high water. It makes all the difference in the world, staying with that person, being with that person, and just letting them know that no matter what you've said or done, it's all going to be okay.
Pat, when I think about the veteran, when I think about this guy that's been in war, and he's been out there on the front lines and doing these things that are just unbelievable. Sometimes I find it hard to believe that they come home and have any kind of a mental issue, because they're just doing such a macho thing.
Yeah.
So there's an ongoing joke, I guess it's a meme or whatever, but I kind of like the definition, even though it's really off base. But that PTSD isn't so much having trauma from when you were in the military, but it's knowing that's when you were deployed, that's the most badass you'll ever be in your life, and then you regret it every day since then, because you're never going to be that badass again, right? Because you're out of the military, you're not doing those things anymore. So it's dealing. It's not so much that I just did all these macho things, and when I was a soldier and I went to war, and you're not thinking of that part being in this situation at all. You're thinking of, oh my God, what if I didn't pull the trigger that day? Oh my God, what if this happened instead of this? Oh my God, what if that kid didn't have that grenade in his hand? What if, over and over and over and over again? And that is, and having all those what ifs is like taking a poison pill every day, and it just progressively gets worse. And if you don't start talking about those things and start connecting with people and reminding people that and whoever you're talking to reminds them, hey, I'm here for you. You don't have to take this poison all by yourself. Like, let me take a couple doses from you, right? Makes all the difference in the world. So it's not so much we were so macho, we're still those people, but it's dealing with what we did while we were macho.
Yeah, and kind of coming to grips sometimes with those experiences are hard, even many years later. You mentioned Vietnam vets. A lot of our Vietnam veterans are retiring and are transitioning into, seasons of life that maybe are more reflective in nature. You're busy working 40 hours a week, raising a family, keeping really busy. Not to say you can't be busy in retirement, but sometimes it's a more reflective season, and thinking back to experiences that were formative is normal for all of us. But when those formative years involved, a lot of trauma, and if you know Vietnam vets who served in military combat experiences, there was some real intense 11 and 10-month experiences that some of these guys had. And I know I've used the word guys, but our men and women go through a lot, and to be thinking back on those experiences now, 50 years later, they're still as fresh as the day that they experienced them, and our mind has an amazing ability to capture those traumatic experiences and sort of burn them into our brains. So when we talk about somebody who's charging into a village, for example, where they're witnessing some things that are just really difficult to see and experience and to smell and to touch and to just experience, as like Pat's word, as badasses as they may have been in those moments or had to be in those moments, they know that the realities and the full implications of what they witnessed, take a lifetime to process. So,
yeah, every time I watch a certain show, I'm not even going to say the show, I'm not going to get into it, but there's a person I deployed with who introduced me to a show. It's probably one of my all-time favorite shows in the world, and I've watched it through it. I've watched all 700 episodes of it probably 8 times. He killed himself. It was a couple years ago. He committed suicide, or died by suicide, and every time I watch that show, I think of him, and I think of him every time. I think of. I have such a specific memory every time thinking of the show now. The memory is going through my head, and I'm reliving that trauma of finding out that he died by suicide. I'm reliving that. So that's how those smells and those memories and those certain things, and that just keeps going on, and that's ultimately what leads to the trauma. That's what leads to the thoughts of wanting to harm yourself or harm someone else.
Yeah.
Your turn.
Absolutely. What's that? Yeah.
Number 3.
Yeah. No, I mean, what can I say to follow up on that? I mean, you're so right. I mean, there's triggers that you learn to identify, and then you just learn to cope with, right? I mean, it's not like, it's like grief and loss. If you lose a parent, if you lose a sibling, if you lose a child, you don't ever get over it. You just learn to live with it. You learn to cope with it. You learn to accept that loss and and to deal with the realities of what that means for you. And in the same token, when you experience trauma and go through difficulties, it can result in some unwanted side effects, like Pat brought up, nightmares or night sweats, or that hypervigilance piece where you have to check the doors multiple times, you have to check the windows, you have to check the perimeter, you have to get somewhere early, a half hour early. There's a lot of emotional space that gets eaten up by those moments, right? And there's your capacity to sometimes tolerate stressors can sometimes be impacted in those moments as well. So these are all just important things. And coming back to your list, one of them says, don't try to fix things. You can't fix them. You can only show support. So, I look at Pat and I think, I'm sure your life partner, your spouse has probably developed a skill set unique to your relationship that helps you guys navigate, what you go through and or what she goes through as a family member of that. So, there's probably instances that it works the other way, where maybe she has some things where you have to help her through as a family member, because like you said, we forget our family members. We forget how they are impacted and the way and the struggle sometimes that goes through. And we talk about compassion fatigue in our work. You can get worn out. Caregivers can get worn out. There's very few jobs that are more difficult than caretaking, and not to suggest that you are in a caretaking role, but to have those seasons of life where we have to invest a lot more in caring for our loved ones, it takes a toll. And there is support out there for our family members, and it's just a matter of tapping into those resources. So take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
That's the last one. That's important. So thanks for Pat. So you sent that out. I guess that one stuck with you.
So. Yeah. That was a long time ago I sent that out, right? That was a while ago I sent that.
It's been a couple months.
Yeah.
You're going over a number of times with different guests. Have different jobs. One of them, Rich Doppler, who's the commander of the VVA in Summers Point, is also a psychologist. And we talked about these things. It's amazing what you may come across when you open yourself up to dealing with this. I've been pretty lucky, mainly because I got Pat's phone number, Jackie's phone number. Now I got Matt's phone number. So, I got people all the time. I used to have an office over in the Black Horse Pike, and we named the complex Veterans Commerce Center. So people would come in thinking that this was like the VA, And for a long time, when we were dealing, I had people every day would come in there asking, for help. And it was pretty cool for a while. Then it started to get a little burdensome.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something important, I think, in life. That's a good life lesson I learned a long time ago. You don't call Social Security. You call Pat. You call Tim. You call Mikey. You don't call the VA. Call Pat.
Right.
Call the folks within those systems of care that will pick up the phone and will respond and are a resource and not a drain, and not going to be sort of chasing our tail trying to get a hold of somebody. But hopefully I think in our communities at least, the VA has presented itself as an opportunity and an organization and a healthcare system that will put the veterans' needs first. I know we're not perfect at the VA, that's for sure.
Not at all.
But it's just knowing that there's an outpatient clinic in Northfield, in Rio Grande, in Vineland. Arm ourselves with those basic information, because there may be a veteran who moves to the area who's not familiar with the resources that are around. And I'm always amazed that folks who enter into care, maybe we're just a couple miles down the road and didn't even realize that there was that level of care right there in our backyard. But yeah, I know we covered a lot of ground, but when we talk about suicide and we talk about safety and suicide prevention, the Veterans Crisis Line is always that first, thing that comes to mind for me. And as it relates to firearm safety, we know that 2/3 of veterans, roughly, who die by suicide die at the hands of a firearm. Sometimes the decision to take one's life is less than 30 minutes, less than 20 minutes. So anything we can do to slow somebody down in those moments separating the ammunition from where we store the firearms, for example, taking small steps to secure firearms, maybe during a season of emotional crisis. If you see somebody's in distress, it may be a good idea for them to, maybe for a week or two, or during particular times of year that are more difficult, trigger sometimes anniversaries can be particularly disturbing. I know a veteran who I worked with in the past who was on a ship in Vietnam that caught fire, and he had experienced some direct trauma as it related to experiences on that ship. And every year, that date was a significant trigger for him. Sometimes we don't even realize what our triggers are, but identifying those triggers and safety is extremely important. To make sure that during specific times that we keep safety the priority. Our mental health system in this country, and point me to another one better in the world, I'm happy to take a look. But we know they're not perfect. Our mental health crisis systems of care in this country sometimes result in people being held against their will. Sometimes result in people going into places where they see people with severe and persistent mental illness responding out loud. You find yourself in these catch-all situations. But our goal here in South Jersey has always been to expedite treatment, to get veterans right where they need to be, to make sure that we provide those open doors and to get them in them. Mm-hmm. So that's a mouthful, but there's a lot there. And for anyone who's struggling, again, reach out to the crisis line. You can get in touch with the local suicide prevention coordinator. Yep. Folks may not be aware, but if a veteran accepts the referral to the local SPC, they'll actually get that local follow-up. What used to be me, now it's Lauren Rueff here in South Jersey.
I just wanted to let our listeners know that our lines are open, 609-798-4475. A little late getting that out there.
Yeah.
But if you have a question for Pat or Matt.
I'd love to know about that text message from whoever it was that was saying that there's less services now. Is that what you had said before? I don't know. There's more things available than I've ever seen in the past 9 years since I've gotten out. And it's Vietnam veterans that have paved the way for all the benefits that we have today.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't have anything that we do now if it wasn't for them starting this fight for us and my generation, starting the fight for my generation. I mean, the Mission Act, caring the community, all the nonprofits that are around that are here to assist veterans, all the tax breaks in the state, like for vets, and just
passion behind welcoming veterans home. I mean, that nobody leads that charge harder than the Vietnam vets, who certainly didn't have that experience by and large, sadly.
Last week we had Eric Husto on, who's the director of parks here in Atlantic County. He spoke at length about the Veterans Cemetery, and also there were some questions called in about why there aren't some of the programs free to veterans, And I think it's important. They finally, I think just about every municipality allows veterans free access to their beaches now. I don't think there's one that doesn't. And I think it should be the same in the county with their hunter's license, their fishing license. I think
it is the same for hunting. Veterans can get 100% vets can get their hunting licenses for free. I think maybe any vet can get their hunting license too in Jersey.
But I do. Let me ask you guys a question about the difference between when our Vietnam veterans came home and today our Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. Have you started to notice any of the issues arising from burn pit?
Yes and no. There are some who have illnesses that can be directly correlated to the burn pits. Eddie has that one friend of his who we know who dealt with those issues. Problem with all of that is gestation period, right? Even for myself, where I have things that are wrong with me that I'm almost certain are because of the burn pits. I slept 30 or 40 feet away from one for 10 months. So it I'm sure there's things wrong with me that are directly correlated to it, but how is that connection made? Like my last time I was in Iraq was 2011, and I'm just now seeing medical issues, maybe because of something that happened to me.
Well, that's not,
11
you
years
know,
ago.
how long ago, Pat, were you in Iraq?
2011.
So, you know, the Vietnam War ended in 1975,
Yeah.
and we didn't come out with the Agent Orange Act till 1991.
Yep.
And even at that, the worst to me is that it's not the VA per
Right.
se. I think that the perception is that we are great. We are the greatest nation in the world sending our men and women to war. We're just not so great bringing them home.
Yeah.
And I think that's what needs to change. And I think it is. I think it's getting much better than what it used to be. Of course, when you see what the Vietnam veterans have gone through, I just don't want to see that with our Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, because there's many more.
And it's okay. This is gonna. I'd love to see, and it's not a knock it toward anybody. So please, I would love to see the statistics or the numbers on on comparing the presumptive list that exists now for Agent Orange exposure to when service members that served in Vietnam started seeing symptoms of those presumptives. I'd love to know. Like, was it 10 years after they got home from Vietnam? Was it 20 years after they got home from Vietnam they started seeing those things? Like, how
Or how many
long
of them-
was it? Like, for me, it was 11 years.
Well,
Right.
you know, Pat, when you think about 16 years, they opened the Vietnam's Agent Orange Act, 1991. 9 years later, because our Blue Water Navy veterans weren't showing any symptoms, they weren't having the problems yet, they
That's right.
took them off of the rolls.
Right.
And it took another 20-some years before they finally, and I had a guy on our show when Bill and I had Veterans Matter radio show. He was suffering his 6th cancer related to Agent Orange. He was out in the China Sea on an aircraft carrier, and finally, through fee-based, one-on-one, he finally got covered, and within 10 months he was dead. It was a shame. And sometimes that's another perception that you hear, is that the government would rather you die than get the treatment that you need.
Well, and there is a list for folks to sign up online. I don't.
Yeah, there is the environmental
Yeah,
registration list. You go on Google, just look up VA environmental exposure registration.
Yeah.
You can go on there. It asks you when you served, where you served, what you did while you were there, the whole nine.
Yeah.
And then in terms of getting out of the military, like taking care of them when they get home, I've always preached about a reverse basic training. All right, there should be something that unbrainwashes you from the way the military is with you.
Yeah.
Closest thing we've seen to that is ETS sponsorship program. I mean, we've been fortunate enough to work with the New Jersey Governor's Challenge in our priority group 2, and getting to meet the people from ETS sponsorship has been fantastic. And
Yeah.
speaking of AA models earlier, that's very similar to what this ETS sponsorship is. So expiration time and service is ETS. When you get out of the military, ETS sponsorship is a program that when you anywhere from like 60, 90 days out from getting out of the military, you sign up for this program, ETS sponsorship, and you're connected with a sponsor from the community you're moving into. So basically, when I got out, what Eddie did for me when I first got out, he would have basically been my ETS sponsor. That's how the program would work. But every single service member will be connected with someone in the community, that knows where the good schools are, that knows where the nice places are to live, where the best places to get your wife's nails done are, to get her hair cut, to best bar, best food, like kind of getting all those creature comforts and getting all those big things helping you out with that stuff, right? So your probability of success getting out of the military is that much higher. Plus, you already know somebody in that community as well. You're not coming out and being like, well, I don't know any of my friends I went to school with, or this is if you're coming home, right? I don't talk to anyone I went to school with anymore. I don't this, I don't that. So who the hell do I have? When I first got out, I had Eddie, and you know, and of course my parents and my wife and everything like that. But outside of my immediate family, you know, who did I call for that kind of help and that kind of stuff? And having that makes all the difference in the world.
You know, when I think back at that period in my life, working with your mom, working with April Kaufman, working with Eddie, and it was just it was so challenging back in them days because you really, you know, when I saw what happened to some of our men and women, the first responders from 9/11, what was happening to them, and then 3 years later we're in Iraq, and then in Afghanistan, and you're talking about hundreds of thousands of men and women that have served, come home, and now you guys got this tremendous challenge ahead of you. I mean, this is just the beginning. You know, when I think back, when I started working with Rolling Thunder back in the early 2000s, and the men were coming up with these horrible illnesses, you know, that was 16, 17 years after the war was over. Then, you know, 20 years before some of it. So the challenge is still ahead. You know, how do you get there without losing, you know, so many? You know, you guys are on the front lines of this. You know, it's easy for me. I sit here, can bring you in, and we can talk about it. But you guys are out there every day. And when I look at this poster, the thing that stands out to me the most is number 5.
Yeah.
Because you guys are really, you know, putting it all on the line, helping everybody. And I tell you, I think so much of what you guys do, you know, Pat, you and Jackie and Matt, what a tremendous challenge to get even the little things done for people.
I appreciate that. I also want to give a shout out to our mental health workers in the local, the clinicians who bear the brunt of a lot of those difficult stories, and you know, who are grappling with coming up with safety plans and coming up with some strategies to address some really difficult circumstances in life. And it does take a toll. And I think you're right to recognize that as being a top priority to take care of ourselves, because so often, you know, we it's that analogy that we use when we're on the aircraft, right? What do you need to do in order to take care of someone? You got to put the oxygen mask on first. And in order to be there for someone else and help someone else, you got to be able to, you know, make sure that you're taking care of yourself first, because you're no good if you don't do that. So that's I appreciate you know, your words, and they ring true. I think on our team we talk about it a lot. You know, and even when you talk about like a peer program, or you talk about any kind of mental health interventions, you got to focus on self-care.
Absolutely.
Director Kane's big on that for his staff.
Yeah, anytime you're even thinking about helping somebody, you need to make sure you have some sort of stress relief baked into that plan of yours that you have. That's you won't be successful if you don't. You absolutely have to have some way to get that whatever stress or whatever you're dealing with off your chest after the fact.
Yeah. You know, one thing I want to let our listeners know is there will not be a show next Saturday. I've got to trek up to Manhattan, pick my daughter up at Pace University.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
But I have a really good friend of mine that was on our radio show, and he's such a great guy. He's a Vietnam veteran, and he lives in South Dakota. His name's Don Ackerman. I originally met him Memorial Day weekend around 2000, maybe 2010 or 11, during the Rolling Thunder rally. And I can remember he's so hungry to help his veterans. He actually made a trek on his motorcycle one year when I was at Stockton. He came all the way from South Dakota overnight on his motorcycle to be on the show.
Wow.
And he got in touch with me because we, you know, back in the day we were complaining here about our men and women having to travel 90 minutes to Philly or Wilmington for treatment, and he's got problems. They travel 4 hours out there in South Dakota, and he just texted me he wants to come on the show because they actually lost their VA clinic where he lives, and he's
They
the
have to travel
chairman
that
of the
far. Every single vet in that area where he's living, that's what the Mission Act is for. You should be able to get your primary care and your specialty care right near your home, and the VA will pay for it. Yeah, we have it here now. We're talking about traveling that 90 minutes.
Well, he'll be on. I believe he's going to call it. I'm not going to make him make that trek, but hopefully you're available, Pat, to help him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he's a
Actually,
great guy.
the perfect person to talk to about care in the community is Jackie. So if you connect him with Jackie, I'm sure she can help. Plus, she lives out. Well, she's not in South Dakota, but she has that second home out in Wisconsin. So she at least, I guess, knows Midwest somewhat.
You know, it's sad to think that our men and women could be put in a position like that to not get the treatment that they need. And I think we are so lucky here. Does anyone have an update on the new clinic? Anything happening?
I've seen him over there with like machines and measuring stuff and surveying and everything like that. So it's moving forward. I know it's still, I guess, technically on schedule. I don't know when they're going to officially break ground, but I'm sure there'll be some sort of event for that. But everything's still moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I talked to John. I don't think that they wanted it to be that like an advertised event or anything. But one of the things that I don't think they realized when going into this is the location on a state highway. What the permitting, it's just mind-boggling what you have to go through just to start a project like this. And you know, when I built over on the Black Horse Pike, it was just crazy what we had to go through, and I really feel for them. But once that facility's done, what a great...
Oh, my God. I can't wait.
I think what's been nice to see, and I've seen it before, they have actually engaged some of the VA primary care staff and different departments to get their feedback on what they'd like to see, what's going to be most useful and helpful to help the veterans, what kind of spaces do we want to have. And, you know, I know Director Kane out of Wilmington has had this vision for some time where he's creating sort of a network of services between Cumberland County, Atlantic County, and Cape May County. And sort of that strategic forethought of making sure that different services are available in that region, that sort of triangle, to make sure that they're getting good VA care but not having to travel, like you said,
you'll be able to,
2 hours to get it.
Exactly. You'll be able to stay in South Jersey, but you'll be able to get, say, you know, X-rays and CT scans in Northfield, and then you'll be able to go see your orthopedist down in Cape May and your podiatrist or whoever, and then you'll be able to see a cardiologist and hearing audiologist out in Vineland, and so you'll just be able to go between the three clinics and get everything you need covered.
Yep.
It's going to be awesome. Cannot wait.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, we're coming down to the last few minutes. I want to thank you for taking time from your families to be here. It's been a wonderful opportunity to cover a subject that it's really foremost on the minds of so many of us that are involved helping veterans. I've been blessed as part of the American Legion Riders to be out there and to have you guys available. You know, it's just been a blessing for me, and I value your friendship and the time that you guys give. So as we say every week, like Commander Bill Butler always said, if you love your freedom, thank a vet.